All right, double OT with Mark and Yianni. We are back in studio after a long sabbatical with the Patriots, playoffs, Super Bowl, etc. We got a new look in here. What do you think?
Yeah, it's good.
All right.
I'm not going to bash the look on TV now.
We got some red, some stripes.
It'll grow on me.
All right, so we haven't really talked, and I know it's happened nearly 2 weeks ago, our Super Bowl thing. So kind of big picture, the Patriots winning their 5th Super Bowl in dramatic and historic fashion. 2 weeks later, what do you recall?
Well, why don't we do this first? See, I did the double OT when you weren't here last week, so let's have your say right now. Why don't you opine on what you thought about the game, and then I'll give you a conclusion.
All right, I thought they were going to lose when they were down 25 in the late in the third quarter, like everyone else did, because I just hadn't seen them be down like that the whole season and mount a comeback. And the way they were playing at that point, it just seemed like Atlanta was the bigger team. So it was historic. I mean, like when you hear the players talk about it and Brady talk about it, they're like, we're moving the ball all day. We just weren't scoring, and we needed to catch a break. And the Hightower forced fumble kind of did that, and they kind of just stayed the course. And it's unbelievable, obviously, that they pulled it off. And when you think about, Mark, how many points they scored in the period of time, it's almost unbelievable. There's like a chart out there that there was like a 1% chance when they were down 25 with 17 minutes left in a game. You can only win that game 1% of the time. So obviously it cemented legacies of Brady and Belichick. And, just being there was wild because, we had to put the post-game show on. So from a logistical standpoint, I had put in my mind that they were losing. So we were going to go to the losing press conference. JP and I were set up at Tom Brady's losing podium. That was going to be our plan prior to going on the post-game show. Then they kept scoring and scoring, and then we kind of switched gears. Maybe they're going to win, which they did. We go out onto the field. And I thought it was cool, all the players out there, unlike 2 years ago, which was equally as memorable of a game, all the players were willing to stick around and do interviews, and they were kind of shuffling from ESPN to NFL Network, and so we got some guys on our show, and you could tell they really enjoyed this one. So I don't know, and I know we've talked about this, do you think it's sweeter than 2 years ago?
For who?
For the fan base, because after not winning it for 10 years, I think 14 was...
I do not think it was sweeter for the fan base than 2 years ago. And the only reason we're even asking that question is because of the way the game unfolded.
Yeah.
If they had just won 31-13, there's no way it would have been. It would have been great. But because the epic comeback occurred, that's why you're even considering that.
A more shockingly thrilling finish. But 14 was a better game.
Better game, cleaner game. The biggest thing about this game, the final conclusion that I've had since it ended, was how they came back and the mental toughness. We hear them talk about it all the time. Because it wasn't Atlanta giving them the game. They helped. They aided the Patriots' comeback, but they didn't just flat out give them the game on a silver platter. There weren't, mistakes as far as blown coverages where guys were catching 97-yard touchdown passes and fumbled punts inside the red zone. That didn't happen. There were mistakes made by the Falcons, and we've talked about them. But it was more the Patriots and the mental toughness and their ability to execute down the stretch that won them that game with some help from Atlanta. That's a major takeaway from me, and it's a credit to Belichick and Brady and all that. And with that being said, you mentioned how after the game we were doing the post-game show, there were a lot of guys willing to talk. Nobody more willing to talk this week, last week, since the Super Bowl really than Tom Brady. Witness his 2-hour, 90-minute podcast he did with Peter King at the Monday Morning Quarterback. What was your major takeaway from that podcast?
I thought part 2, which I listened to today, talking more big picture stuff, legacy, his age was more interesting than he broke down the game and the comeback, almost play by play, and Brady's recall, not only for this game that just happened, but going back 10. The direct snap on the 2-point conversion, we used that play with Kevin Falk in 2003, week 8. Brady's recall is amazing. What I loved about part 2 is just how much Brady loves playing football, and he had that great quote, the only thing I love to do more than playing football is preparing to play football. And the one thing that stuck with me, Mark, was, my wife says, you should retire. And I said, no, this is the fun part. He goes, I have all the answers to the questions on the test. He says, I played in 261 games. Nothing you can do defensively surprises me anymore. So he's thinking, I feel better at 39 than 25. I feel completely 100% and healthy. And above the shoulders, mentally, schematically, nothing can surprise me. So it's almost like he's playing against JV guys and he's on varsity. So I think he considers the next couple years maybe a stretch that'll compare with any other in his career where he feels mentally and physically as good as he ever has.
My takeaway, and you made some great points there, was that Tom Brady right now from a football NFL perspective is essentially what we see a lot in the media. Vin Scully, Al Michaels, how old are they?
Yeah.
It's a situation where the guy, he's worked so hard to get to a point where he now has it licked. He makes a ton of money, or if we're talking about a media, he finally makes a ton of money. He's got a cushiony job, a great platform, a great gig. So when you're 62, you don't want to give it up when you're 65. You keep going until you're 70, 75. Brent Musburger, how old is he? Because it takes some time to get to that point. And that's what I thought of when he said, I finally have the answers to the test. Like these guys who are older that stick around, not just the media, I'm sure other professions too, they finally have everything. They have all the power. They know exactly how to handle and operate their job and do their job. Why give it up? You make all the money. You got great help. Why give it up? That's Tom Brady right now.
And I do think Deflategate fueled him to a certain extent. But he does, when you hear him talk about it, he was saying, if I get down to those depths and indulge that kind of stuff, then I lose because they're in my head, and I don't want anyone to be in my head. Ask specifically about why did you take the high road with Goodell. Do you believe him that it didn't really feel like
no?
He's able to compartmentalize it?
He's able to compartmentalize it, but no.
But
these are human beings. This is a human being. So yes, he thinks about these things.
But McDaniels told Peter King he didn't bring it up once all season. Do you believe that?
Maybe. I'm not sure if I believe that or not. I don't see why there'd be a reason for him to bring it up with a coworker.
Kind of like an unspoken thing.
Yeah, especially a coach. I don't know. I don't know if I believe that, but I don't believe that this didn't fuel him at all. We see fiery Tom Brady on the sideline. We've seen him swear. We've seen him yell. We've seen him get angry. He said before the Super Bowl, if you heard the sound effects, he went up to the ref and said, "Hey, nothing personal if I swear at you because I'm a jerk." Essentially, that's what he said. That guy is in there. Yeah. So he's not all just sunshine and daffodils and everything's positive. He's that a-hole that he alluded to.
He alluded to his college career. Nothing was ever given to me. Nothing.
So those things still fuel him. He remembers the college career, how he was doubted, how he was fourth on the depth chart. Those things, and those are negative feelings. Those are negative feelings that are deep inside.
I will say this. He comes off as, when it comes to his TB12 health and wellness deal, he is a true salesman with that stuff. He is so, he sounds like anyone else, a born-again Christian or anyone who's trying to, who's adhering to a certain ideology.
Listen, I appreciate anytime somebody is passionate about anything. You could be talking about that chair. If you're passionate about it, I'm going to listen because you're thinking, what the heck is he so passionate? I appreciate, and I have questions about his methodologies. I wish Peter King asked him, okay, if it's so good, how can I benefit from that? What do I need to do? What can this player do? Has anybody approached you? Blah, blah,
so
blah.
If you're Tony Romo, you're 37. Are you calling up Tom Brady? Hey, what's your deal? How do I do what you do? Or do you think other people kind of?
Is he late in the game to do that?
People kind of like roll their eyes at what Brady's saying.
I hope not. Tom Brady is proof. If I was Peter King, I would have asked him, is it a huge hit to your business model if you pull a hamstring?
He said his body is prepared to not get hurt.
So what if he pulls a hamstring? What is everyone supposed to think? What happened to the big...
He pretty much gave himself an out. Injuries happen. It's a contact game, but...
He alluded to more broken bones, though. That's different. Yeah. I don't know. If he plays... he certainly doesn't look like he's
Here's the other thing. We've talked about this a little in the past. He's got the perfect job, best quarterback ever, perfect wife, great, cute family. He's got to have some skeleton in the closet. He's got to have some demons. He can't just be this perfect, right?
What demons you have?
Ask my wife. I'm difficult sometimes.
Well, yeah. But what skeleton do you have?
Demons, so to speak.
Big-time skeletons, like a love child? Or he's annoying when his wife's trying to make dinner. He's unhelpful.
I don't know, man. Tom Brady, he's something else.
Yeah, listen, that's not our business anyway. But I'm sure he's not perfect. I'm sure he annoys his wife.
I love when people come up to me in the last week, people who saw our Super Bowl coverage. How's my boyfriend doing? And you just know, oh, Tom, he's doing great.
Yeah.
That's everyone's line. How's my boyfriend doing? Everyone dates Tom Brady.
Yeah, he's likable.
All right, let's switch gears. A good Brady segment there. College basketball. Both URI and PC trending in different directions. Both sort of kind of on the bubble. PC a big win over Xavier last night. They beat Butler last weekend, so they're kind of inching up the Big East. URI a bad loss to Fordham. They were double-digit favorites, and coming off that Dayton loss, steamrolling into a Fordham loss. You were there with Dan Hurley, who was despondent last night. More surprising, URI's slide, and they were a top 25 team earlier in the year, or PC potentially playing into an NCAA tournament bid?
It's a tough question. I did not think, based on stuff I had heard, that PC was going to come close to the tournament, let alone maybe get in. But URI, yes, of course, I thought they'd be good. But am I shocked that they're underachieving? I'm not shocked, but my answer is URI. I remember tweeting a picture before the season proclaiming that this is the best college basketball team in New England. I can't say that right now. I am surprised that, and we're sort of prisoners of what happened last night, but a tough loss to Dayton, and then they come back and lose who they were double-digit favorites over Fordham. They lose by double digits. That is tough. So yeah, I'm more surprised that we're having this conversation about URI at this point. I thought that we would at least be talking about just having to win a couple games in the A10 tournament, not maybe winning the tournament in order to get in. I didn't think we'd have to go there.
Now, a lot can obviously transpire between now and Selection Sunday. PC could make it. They may not make it. URI could win the A10 tournament. We don't know. But at this juncture, I think URI's skid is more surprising. Coach Cooley, with a good amount of talent, is going to have his guys ready most nights.
Yeah.
So as good as the Big East is, I figured they'd be in the middle of a pack. I think they were picked to finish second to last. If they get to 500 in the Big East, I talked to a guy from the Big East last night. He was just sitting next to me. He thinks they're getting 6 bids, 4 are solidified. So those last 2 are kind of up for grabs based on the Big East strength of schedule and so forth. So they could slide in. But the reason, I just dropped my papers, URI is more struggling, as we said, top 25. In Mohegan Sun earlier in the year, they beat Cincinnati, come kind of close to beating Duke. And we're like, all right, that's one signature win. And then they have those close losses to Houston and some other teams. And you're like, all right, just kind of take care of business in the A10. And close games with Dayton, they lose both. And you need those because a team like Dayton is a win that actually matters. So like last night, beating Fordham wouldn't have helped their resume, but losing almost disqualifies them for an at-large bid. So I think obviously URI is underachieved. That being said, they could win the A10 tournament. And I wrote that last night on Twitter, and people getting on me for that. Other than VCU and Dayton, I don't know who else in the A10 really scares you.
Fordham.
And in 2011, Mark, when I worked in Richmond, I covered VCU, who had an abysmal February. They played in the CAA at the time, and that's like a one-bid league. And at the end of the month, Shaka Smart, their coach, ripped up the calendar. I think he lit it on fire. He was like, all right, start new. And what did they do? They won their conference, and they went to the Final Four that year. So if Hurley can just get his guys to be like, all right, we're still a good team, put all that behind us, and then they win the A10 tournament, ultimately they achieve their goal. But they're not getting in without that, so that's a huge disappointment.
That takes mental toughness to do what you just outlined, which they haven't showed a lot.
They haven't showed a lot.
Couple thoughts. Yes, they could still win the tournament. That's the good news. I thought, just a few thoughts on URI, I thought this season they would just win games, more games, any games on talent alone.
Yeah.
They really haven't done that. Even games where I thought they'd cruise, they've had some struggles. And they haven't really just been able to roll the ball out there, roll the jerseys out there and win. And I know that in sports you don't like to think like that, but I thought they had talent that they could do that every now and then.
Crunch time, I think's been their issue. Those key last-minute moments. And 43 points, with Hassan and EC and Jarvis and Jared, those guys can score.
Yeah, and let me tell you something. And I think we've talked about this. And we'll make final conclusions at the end of the year. But everything that we needed to know about this URI team, we might have been told the night they lost to Providence. That was a big game. They didn't handle it well. This was supposed to be a superior team. They lost. They have lost how many straight? They lose again. It was kind of a microcosm for the season.
Yeah.
They couldn't get that win, and they haven't really been able to get any other win akin to that game since then. It's really what this year has been all about for URI, and we'll see if they can get it together. You hate to have to ask them to win the tournament.
But I wonder, Mark, if it's almost a blessing in that, let's say they're on the bubble and maybe you get to the finals and you get in. it's definitive now. You need to win it. So, you go game by game, but it's almost like there's no slipping up. You know what's at stake. Whereas if you're at the bubble, maybe win and lose in the final as you get in. Now it's just clear cut.
No, that's not a blessing. I'd rather, have the chance to get in if I don't win the tournament.
All right, gun to your head right now. Either or both teams in the tournament?
Neither team will make the tournament right now. I think URI doesn't end up winning the tournament, the A10 tournament, and I think Providence gets shafted.
All right, I'll agree with that.
I can
February 16th, neither team makes it.
We'll see. Let's see how it goes. It's still early. I mean, there's still time, but if Providence can find a way to beat Creighton on the road, that would be something.
Their schedule down the road isn't that hard.
Not after Creighton.
Yeah.
It's like home against DePaul and then another game. I forget who it is, but right now, I don't think the committee is going to select Providence. I think they could be in as far as their resume. I wouldn't necessarily say they're not a tournament team.
And if they somehow beat Villanova in the Big East and got a win like that.
I'm not saying they're not a tournament team. I'm just saying I don't think they'll end up getting in.
Yeah. I mean, they're 6-8 right now in the Big East.
So speaking of getting in, the Boston Bruins have had trouble getting into the playoffs. That's a big reason why this man is now sitting next to that logo, because he has missed the playoffs the last couple years, and the Bruins are on the precipice of missing this year. There's still games to be played. Did the Bruins mess up this whole Claude Julien firing, and did they drop the ball, essentially, allowing him to go to the Canadiens?
No. If you want to fire Claude, which I think they should have done after last year, or perhaps even earlier, that's your prerogative. You don't want him, throw him to the curb. Now, you don't want your rival to pick up your former coach, just from a rivalry standpoint. But if the Canadiens think that he's better than Michel Therrien, then good for him, good for them, replacing Michel for the second time with Claude and giving him a 5-year contract. So they're really high on him. But like, if you
$4 million a year,
if you dump your girlfriend and she settles up with another guy, you dumped her, but you still don't love that she's dating your friend, right? So I love it for the rivalry, and I love that the Canadiens did it because it's such a
Well, she wouldn't be
stick
dating
it to you.
She wouldn't be dating your friend in this case. She'd be dating somebody you don't like.
All right, but you still don't want.
No, you don't like it.
You want them off the. You get out of here, off the mark. I don't want to see you anymore. I think it's good for the rivalry. But listen, if the Bruins think he shouldn't have been their coach, which they did, he's out. They're going with Bruce Cassidy, 3-0. They're doing better things offensively. I think their defense is going to eventually suffer. But listen, they don't play for the rest of the regular season. Who knows if they'll see each other in the playoffs? So this may not bite you in the butt this year, maybe down the road. But we all know Claude's system. He won a Stanley Cup here. But at this juncture, I think the Bruins needed to part ways. So I think it's sexy from a media perspective and a fan perspective. But on the ice, I don't know if it hurts them.
I don't think this ends up being a game changer on the ice. If the Canadiens end up beating the Bruins, they probably were going to beat them anyway. If the Bruins end up beating the Canadiens, they probably would have beaten them anyway. I just don't see Claude Julien as being the needle mover in this rivalry in the Eastern Conference playoffs. If you want to second guess the Bruins, you alluded to it. They should have done this earlier. And maybe you could say he wouldn't have gone to Montreal, or they would have kept riding with Therrien. I don't know. But they should have done this earlier. They dropped the ball, doesn't even do it justice how it ended last year, losing 6-1 to Ottawa or whatever it is. And Tuukka Rask doesn't play because he's sick. And listen, he's sick, but that's a game you have to have, and they didn't have their goalie because he was sick. Those are the facts. So, and a complete no-show by the Bruins. So this guy was a problem, and they hadn't had the consistency in making the playoffs. And everyone, we'll see about the talent. Listen, last time I checked, 2 Boston Bruins players were skating with the first line for Team Canada for the World Hockey Championships or whatever back earlier in the fall. So they had some talent there. There's talent there. He didn't utilize the young guys well enough. Bruce Cassidy, better at that. Now, we'll see it's early on in Bruce Butch's tenure or whatever. But something had to change. It was stale. They weren't listening. He's a good coach, Andy Reid, but something had to change.
Is the NHL the worst for regurgitating coaches, just keeping them around and not bringing them else?
Does it happen more in the NHL? I mean, we've seen it in other sports before. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think. We saw it the Redskins brought back Joe Gibbs. I'm never a fan of that. And Montreal likes the bilingual thing where a guy speaks English and French.
Press conference.
So like it. If this guy was the head coach before and it didn't work.
I tell you what's going to be interesting. The first time, or let's say they're in the playoff series where he starts kind of bashing Boston because he left on good terms. Boston's this great sports city, and now, he's up there
like you
and
said, he can do what
there.
he wants. He was fired, so he can go there.
Yeah.
Bruins fans can't be mad at Claude. He was fired. They let him go. Just like you can't be mad at the girl if she went and dated whoever because you dumped her. So,
all right, let's talk some hoops. All-Star break this weekend for the Celtics, second place after the Cavs in the Eastern Conference. We know they're right there, but clearly not good enough to, let's say, get to the finals or win the finals. Trading deadline is, I think, early March. Will they do anything splashy, the Celtics, or should they?
Yeah, they should make a move, absolutely. But what you can't do is what I've discussed before. You cannot move the Brooklyn pick for anything short of a superstar. You need to find a superstar. That's the only way you win in the NBA, especially with the landscape the way it is with the Warriors and LeBron still doing his thing with the Cavs. You need to find a superstar, and you need to find and locate the quickest route to getting a superstar. If a trade isn't that route, then you have to do it through the draft and hope you can do it through the draft. And remember, Golden State, they signed Kevin Durant, now they got this super team, but everybody else was drafted. Curry, Thompson, Draymond Green were all drafted.
So and OKC had drafted.
They drafted Durant and Westbrook. So most of these teams today have done it through the draft. Even Cleveland. I mean, that was a little different, but they drafted Kyrie and then LeBron.
So the Celtics are in such a weird dynamic because they're already a playoff team with a high draft choice. That never happens. That's how great the Brooklyn trade is.
Yes.
So you're not in the let's rebuild mode because you're already there, but you want to use traditionally a top 3 pick. If only last year or this year was a year in which there was a LeBron or a Duncan or a Durant, and there just isn't. Like, who knows if Ben Simmons is going to be great? I don't even know who's projected to be the top 3 picks yet this year.
Josh Jackson, not a kid. I don't know.
So you get Jaylen Brown at 3 last year, who's a good player.
Good player.
But there are guys who are chosen 3 overall that are, Michael Jordan was 3 overall, that are in the Hall of Fame. I don't think Jaylen Brown's that. So I think I'd be willing to part with the Brooklyn pick for the right player.
For who?
I don't see. That's the thing with the trading deadline.
Yes, I would be too. For the right player. I think in the NBA,
you're going to match up. I don't know.
I'll tell you,
Jimmy
if you're
Butler,
right or wrong,
are you
absolutely the wrong player.
Yeah,
no.
I don't care for Jimmy Butler in that position.
He's not a superstar.
I tell you, I would have liked Ibaka if they didn't give away.
Not the Brooklyn pick.
No, not the. But last week he signed with the Raptors. I would have liked that. Someone mentioned Whiteside today when I was listening on the radio.
Like him, but that's not a Brooklyn pick.
You're probably not getting him or Anthony Davis. Like, you need someone big.
Anthony Davis is the Brooklyn
But he's
pick.
not available. He's a top 5 player. So they're in this weird. Now, you should say this about Danny Ainge. You look back 4 years ago, whenever they traded Pierce and Garnett, and I guess Rondo was still around, to where they are now, a top 2 team in the East. They got Al Horford. They got Isaiah Thomas for virtually nothing.
Yeah.
He's a top 10 MVP candidate. They got the number 3 pick in Jaylen Brown and have a number 5 pick. So all things considered, Ainge has done a good job.
Yeah.
But none of it matters if you get to the second round of the playoffs and dip out every year.
And they can't win the championship. So he's done
a
good job.
The NBA is the toughest sport to adjust on the fly or to. In the NFL, we see teams every year that miss the playoffs and are good the next year.
Very easy to get mired in
Belichick can pick
mediocrity.
up Alan Branch or a Jabal Sheard off the scrap heap and have them be contributors. The NBA, I feel like you can't win with those just pieces. You
and
need
unfortunately, they have Isaiah Thomas, who I'm a big fan of, but he's limited defensively. So you have a guy who's a great scorer, but he's very short, and as I said, not the best defensive player. So I think he's more suited. And his points per game would say otherwise, but he's more suited to being an offensive spark off the bench as a 6th man or something because he doesn't play great defense. Instead, you got him out there trying to win you games. He's a guy, if you really focus on him in a playoff situation, you might be able to limit him. And then where do the Celtics turn? Because Al Horford's a nice player, but he doesn't put your team on his back. So I don't know where you go. You know, if you're the Celtics, it's tough because who do you pair? Okay, you got Isaiah who's playing like Iverson right now, but who do you pair with him?
Right.
It's not even a Paul Pierce situation, I don't think, where you knew you had a piece. You knew it. We think Isaiah's a piece. Pierce, we knew was by 07, we knew he was a piece, and you could put people with him. Isaiah's great. I don't know if he's a piece. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll have to wait and see with the Celtics on that, but they are clearly headed for the playoffs. That'll wrap things up for this episode of Double OT. For Mark Dondero, I'm Yianni Caracas. We should be getting back into the normal routine going forward here. Anything else you want to add?
No, hopefully we can get some ISO shots next time.
We'll get some ISO shots and that camera comes back. Yep. Rest in peace, that camera. Let's hope for a speedy recovery.
We'll
see you soon. All right.